The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, actually that contribution was untypically graceless from that member. Well, he's a member who understands the traditions, and actually often at times he's been one of the more polite and understanding members of this House when it's really mattered. And I would have thought that on this occasion, the first time in, 100 years, that a Prime Minister has voluntarily decided to resign the job. Well, Holyoake was under a pressure that John Key has never been under. I would have thought the member might have been slightly more generous, but he wasn't. And actually that's the difference between him and John Key. John Key would rather work hard and strive for a better country. That member works hard and strives for a bitter country. A better country or a bitter country. And that couldn't be more exemplified than by that contribution. I mean, the other difference is this. The Prime Minister, who has announced his resignation but not yet resigned, has always believed you get the best from people with confidence, not with divisiveness. With confidence, not with division. And, Mr. Speaker, that member should acknowledge today that he could have learnt a few political lessons. There was a time when he could fill a stadium in the Trump manner. It's just that that was a long time ago. It was a Tauranga racecourse, to be fair, and it was a big crowd, and then they were ready for it. But, Mr. Speaker, John Key has had the impact of changing the way New Zealand politics works, and his legacy is not the tirade of bitterness that the member thought was appropriate for this occasion, which I actually don't think he believed most of it. His legacy is actually the opportunity he's left for this country to achieve so much in the next 5 to 10 years. And what state is it in? Well, of course there are intractable social problems. Well, they have proven to be so in the past, as the members opposite were in government and spent billions of dollars of taxpayers' money trying to deal with those difficult social problems such as youth unemployment. But under John Key's leadership, with the fresh thinking, with the almost unpolitical way he's approached those problems, this government has developed a toolkit that will allow, over the next 5 or 10 years, us to finally get a grip on, at an individual and personal level, on the kind of social challenges that the member outlined. Because in that sense we agree. Of course there's social challenges. The question is, who's got a fresh view on those old social challenges? And John Key did, and still does remarkably, after 10 years as a party leader and 8 years as a Prime Minister. So, Mr. Speaker, the member also referred to this odd argument that economic growth shouldn't count people. That if more people want to live in your country, that's a problem for economic growth. Well, it isn't. Of course, if you say, if we take away all the things that make the economy grow, it's not growing, well, that's true. But actually, the member may recall himself, and certainly his colleagues in opposition, campaigning for quite some time that not enough people wanted to live in New Zealand. So they have to answer this question. Do they believe that it's better to have people leaving the country because that drives up per capita GDP? Or do they believe it's better that our children prefer to live here, as they have amply demonstrated under the stewardship of Prime Minister John Key? Just a sense of the magnitude of that. In 2012, there was a net outflow of 39,000 people to Australia, actually bigger than the number of seats in the stadium where the Prime Minister did the election ad. And last year, it was an inflow of 2,000. And that is one, from my point of view, one of the lasting legacies of John Key. He persuaded New Zealanders, with his confidence and his leadership, that this could be a country where their children would want to stay and make a living and raise a family. In fact, we keep thinking that the tide must turn, but it hasn't. But it hasn't. So I can quote all sorts of economic figures about where the economy's got up to, but the measure of his legacy is that our children, our families, now think when they look at the rest of the world, this is a place where they have more confidence that they can realise more of their aspirations, Mr. Speaker. Well, you know, that's the difference in the South. We're in favour of growth and everyone else is against it. That's pretty much how it's unwinding. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to take the opportunity to make a few comments on, not just on the Prime Minister's legacy, but on his way of being a politician, his way of working with other people. And I must say that the way he has conducted his exit from his position illustrates the graciousness and the consideration that he has shown every single day that I have worked with him as a deputy leader and a deputy Prime Minister. This is a Prime Minister who, despite the enormous pressures of the job, is always able to turn up to work and deal with people in a confident and cheerful manner, always in a positive manner, always in a considerate manner, and always polite. The way he dealt with people he met on the campaign trail was the way he dealt with his colleagues every single day that he has held office, with just a few days left to go. And that has been at the core of his other major achievement, and that is stable and trusted government. And the opposition might laugh at that, but in the world as we know it, stable and trusted government is becoming increasingly rare. We're one of the few countries where that is now the case. And an important part of that achievement of stable and trusted government has been the integrity of the Prime Minister and his ability to ensure that the government remained cohesive, that the relationships in it were positive, and that it could continue to make the decisions that are necessary to take the country forward. So, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will not in any way be belittled by the comments of the opposition. He never let that bother him. And actually, it doesn't matter what Winston Peters or Andrew Little say today, it'll be as irrelevant as the things they said for the whole 8 years he was Prime Minister. Made no difference, despite political obsession with John Key, known as Key derangement syndrome. These amazing political machines never laid a finger on him. Never knocked him off track, never brought him down, never distracted him from the task of achieving what was best and right for New Zealanders. And, Mr. Speaker, in that context, that is the Prime Minister's performance in the bear pit of politics. He had no equal. He had no equal. Well, I know the Labor... OK, so the Labor Party talk about Helen Clark. John Key beat Helen Clark by a long way in an election, and actually the Labor Party have not ever recovered from it. So, Mr. Speaker, in the bear pit of politics, the Prime Minister showed that he had the strength and the direction to maintain the position of government, maintain the trust of the people, and ultimately to leave the country in a much, much better state than he found it, despite the challenges that he had to deal with. And, Mr. Speaker, finally, the mention of the Prime Minister and his legacy is that he's left a team in great shape. We've seen what's happened to political parties when leaders stay too long. Prime Minister has left us a talented, energised team with a clear sense of direction and the best way to fulfil his legacy is to build on those achievements.